My father-in-law dismissed my concerns about his company's finances with a laugh that echoed through their estate dining room. "We don't need your pocket change," Robert said, cutting me off mid-sentence, while my wife Emma smirked from across the table. I quietly pulled out my phone under the table and texted my financial advisor to withdraw every single penny I'd invested in their business. Their emergency board meeting was scheduled to start in less than an hour, and they had no idea what was coming. Let me back up and explain how I ended up in this situation. I married Emma 5 years ago. She came from serious old money, the kind of family where dropping $5,000 on dinner wine doesn't even make them blink. Her father, Robert, ran what he constantly bragged was a $50 million enterprise called Hamilton Industries. I came from absolutely nothing. My parents died in a car accident when I was 8 years old, some drunk driver on a rainy night, the kind of tragedy that's so common it barely makes the news. My grandmother Ellen took me in and raised me while working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I wore thrift store clothes and learned early to stay quiet and invisible because being noticed meant being mocked for your Walmart shoes and hand-me-down jackets. But I was exceptionally good with computers and math, really good. I started building websites for local businesses when I was 16 years old. By 18, I'd saved enough to go to community college. By 22, I had a degree in a failing software consulting business and absolutely no safety net whatsoever. That's when I met Vincent Harrison, an old money guy, who somehow kept his soul intact. His family made their fortune in shipping back in the 1800s. He found me through a mutual connection when I was building software for a nonprofit. He was 78 years old, sharp as a blade, and lonely in that way rich people get when they realize money can't buy genuine connection. We became real friends. He mentored me, not in the condescending way Robert would later try to, but with genuine respect for who I was. He saw something in me, the hunger maybe, or the discipline that comes from growing up with nothing. He taught me about investment, about capital, about how money actually works when you have enough of it to make it work for you. When he died 2 years before I met Emma, he left me everything. Not publicly, that wasn't Vincent's style. He structured it through trusts and LLCs and investment vehicles, the kind of financial architecture that kept everything completely private. He knew I'd need that privacy. "Money changes how people see you," he told me once near the end. "Make sure you know who loves you for who you are before you let them know what you have." So I kept it completely quiet. The software consulting business was real, and I genuinely enjoyed the work. It gave me a reason to be busy that people understood. But underneath that normal life, I had 40 million in liquid assets, another 20 million in real estate, and an investment portfolio that my advisor Derek managed with surgical precision. When I met Emma, I was just myself, a guy who worked hard, treated her well, and loved her with the intensity of someone who never expected to be loved back. She was beautiful and brilliant and kind, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Her family was incredibly wealthy, but I didn't care about that since I had my own money. What I needed, what I desperately wanted, was to be accepted, to be valued, to have someone look at me and see something worth keeping. I wanted to belong somewhere after years of being the outsider. I was such a complete fool. For 5 long years, I sat through dinners at their massive Connecticut mansion while they treated me like their personal charity project. Robert would call me son in this incredibly condescending tone that made it crystal clear I'd never measure up to his standards. Emma's mother, Patricia, had that frozen smile, wealthy women perfect over decades of charity galas and polite dismissal. Her brother, Alex, made constant snide comments about my background. And Emma, my own wife, just let it all happen without ever once defending me or standing up for me. I kept my mouth shut and my real financial situation completely private, wanting to see if they would ever value me for who I actually was rather than what they assumed I had or didn't have. That particular evening, the one that changed everything, I'd been spending months carefully reviewing their quarterly financial reports. I'd noticed some genuinely serious problems building up. Their real estate division was absolutely drowning in debt. A tech acquisition from the previous quarter had gone catastrophically bad. The whole company structure was dangerously overleveraged. I genuinely wanted to help, so I tried bringing it up during dinner in the most respectful way I could manage. "I've been looking at the quarterly reports," I started carefully. "There are some concerning trends. The debt-to-equity ratio is problematic, and the real estate division appears over-leveraged. The tech acquisition from last quarter..." Robert cut me off mid-sentence, with a dismissive laugh that made me feel about 2 inches tall. That's adorable, he said, reaching for his wine glass. You have to understand something. You're thinking in thousands. We think in millions. That's the difference between us. Emma leaned forward, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. That bracelet was an anniversary gift from her parents, never from me. Honey, maybe we should leave the business discussions to people who actually understand business, she said with this patient tone you'd use with a confused child. Something in her voice made me really look at her, truly see her. The woman I'd married seemed kinder in my memories. Or maybe I'd just been too dazzled by her world, too desperate to belong, to notice the sharp edge that had always been there beneath the polished exterior. I do understand the business, I said, keeping my voice completely level. Years of growing up poor had taught me to keep emotions locked down tight, to never give people the satisfaction of seeing you bleed. I've been studying it carefully for months now. The debt ratios are problematic. Robert set down his wine glass with a soft clink that somehow sounded like a judge's gavel. Let me be completely direct here. I appreciate that you're trying to contribute to the conversation. I really do. It's sweet in a way. But Hamilton Industries is a $50 million enterprise. We have entire departments filled with Harvard MBAs whose only job is to analyze exactly what you're talking about. We don't need, and he paused deliberately, and something genuinely cruel flickered in his eyes. We don't need your pocket change. The entire table went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that expensive Persian rug. Alex smirked into his napkin like he'd just heard the funniest joke. Patricia suddenly became extremely interested in studying her wine glass. Emma stared down at her plate. And that reaction, more than anything else that happened, cut through me like an actual blade. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look uncomfortable with her father humiliating me. She just sat there in complicit silence. I see, I said very softly. Robert apparently took my quiet response as complete acceptance and acquiescence. He smiled broadly now, expansive and generous in what he thought was his victory. Look, you're family now. You married our daughter, but let's be realistic about what you actually bring to this table. You have your little software consulting business working from home, and that's perfectly fine for what it is. But this, he gestured broadly at the dining room, at the mansion, at the entire empire he'd inherited and slowly mismanaged. This is generational wealth. This is legacy. You don't build something like this with pocket change and good intentions. No, I agreed quietly, pulling my phone out of my pocket. You build it with capital. Exactly, Robert said, clearly pleased that I was finally understanding what he thought was my proper place in the hierarchy. Capital, scale, connections, these are things that take decades to develop properly. Speaking of capital, I interrupted him calmly, my fingers already moving across my phone screen. I need to make a quick call. Excuse me for just a moment. I stood up from the table and pushed my chair back. The Persian rug beneath my feet cost more than the car I'd driven in college, the same car I'd actually lived in for 3 months when my consulting business was failing, and I was too proud to ask anyone for help. Funny how life works sometimes. They'd mistaken my pride for gratitude, my silence for acceptance, my patience for weakness. We're in the middle of dinner, Patricia protested weakly. This will just take a moment, I said, already walking toward Robert's study. It's quite urgent. Behind me, I could hear Alex mutter something snide and Emma's soft laugh following me down the hallway. That sound echoed past family portraits of Hamilton generations, stretching back decades, all of them staring down with that same expression Robert had just worn. Bemused condescension from people who'd never had to actually fight for anything in their entire lives. Robert's study was all dark wood and leather, old money incarnate and suffocating. I closed the heavy door behind me and pulled up my contacts list. My hand was completely steady as I made the call. That surprised me a little. I thought it might shake with anger or nerves, but it didn't. Derek Chen answered on the second ring. I wasn't expecting to hear from you tonight. I need you to do something for me immediately, I said, walking to the window and looking out at the Hamilton estate grounds. 15 acres in Connecticut. The pool house alone was bigger than the apartment I'd grown up in with Grandma Ellen. I need you to withdraw all backing from Hamilton Industries, everything. Silence on the other end of the line. Then carefully, everything. You're talking about Approximately 40 million across various investment vehicles, loans, and equity positions. That's 90% of their operational capital. I know exactly what it is, I said calmly. Another pause. Derek had been my investment manager for 4 years now, since before I'd even married Emma. Since before any of them knew that the quiet guy from nowhere had built something substantial. He'd watched me turn a struggling software consulting business into something else entirely. He'd never once asked why I kept it quiet. Maybe he understood instinctively that some people need to know they can survive completely on their own, that the safety net they're sleeping under isn't borrowed from someone else. You realize what this will do to them, Derek said very carefully. The real estate division is days away from a major closing. If we pull the bridge financing now, I realize it completely. The tech acquisition from last quarter was structured with our debt facility as primary collateral. If we call that loan, call it, I said firmly. Derek's voice gentled somewhat. I've known you a long time. I've never seen you make any decision out of pure anger or spite. I'm not angry, I said, and realized as I spoke that it was completely true. I felt absolutely calm, crystalline clear, like I'd been walking through thick fog for 5 straight years and suddenly the sun had burned it all away. I'm just completely done being invisible. When do you want this executed? I checked my watch, 8:47 in the evening. Now, all of it immediately. And Derek, make sure the notifications go directly to Robert's email, the one he checks obsessively every 5 minutes. I want him to see it tonight, not tomorrow morning. That's going to trigger their emergency board meeting protocols automatically. Their corporate bylaws require a meeting within 12 hours of any event that affects more than 25% of operational capital. I know that. I've read their bylaws cover to cover. Of course I had. While they thought I was reading bedtime stories to the children we didn't have yet, the children Emma kept putting off because her body was still perfect and she wanted to keep it that way, I'd been reading corporate documents and financial statements. While they assumed I was watching football in their media room, I'd been analyzing 5 years' worth of quarterly reports. While they smiled at me across dinner tables and called me son and dear and thought I was content to be their charity case, their pet project, I'd been building a very different kind of empire, in complete silence. It's done, Derek said finally, after a long moment. The paperwork will hit their servers in approximately 15 minutes. Are you absolutely sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life. I ended the call and stood there in Robert's study for a long moment, looking around at the room he considered his private sanctuary. The walls were completely covered in photographs of business triumphs, framed newspaper clippings announcing deals, stock certificates from companies he'd acquired. There wasn't a single photograph of Emma anywhere, not one picture of his daughter, just monuments to himself and his supposed genius. When I opened the study door to return to dinner, Emma was standing right there in the hallway waiting. She'd followed me, or maybe she'd been sent to check on me. What was that about? She asked with a slight edge to her voice. Business, I said simply. You don't have that kind of business. Not the kind that pulls you away from dinner with my parents like something urgent, don't I? Something flickered in her eyes then. Uncertainty, maybe. It was such a foreign expression on her face, like she'd tried on a costume that didn't quite fit right. You're being weird tonight. Am I? I'm just being myself, Emma. Maybe you've never actually noticed before now. That's not fair, she said. But there was absolutely no heat in it, just reflexive defense. No, I agreed quietly. It's really not fair at all. We returned to the dining room together where Robert was holding court, telling some long story about outmaneuvering a competitor in a deal from the 80s. Alex was laughing right on cue like always. Patricia was smiling that practiced smile. This was their entire world distilled into one scene. Stories about victory, about dominance, about putting people in their proper place. I sat back down and picked up my fork. The filet mignon on my plate had gone cold by now, but I cut into it anyway and chewed methodically. 9 minutes. That's exactly how long it would take for the automated systems to process Derek's instructions, for the capital withdrawals to cascade through their systems and trigger the emergency protocols, for the emails to start flooding Robert's inbox one after another. As I was saying before the interruption, Robert continued, not even bothering to acknowledge that I'd returned to the table, the key to business success is knowing when you have real leverage and when you don't. This fellow I was negotiating with thought he could. Robert's phone buzzed once. Then it buzzed again insistently. Then it started ringing loudly. Here's the thing about poverty, real poverty. You learn to be invisible. You learn to calculate whether you can skip lunch to help with bills. You learn that the world has people who have and people who don't, and you're firmly in the don't category. After my parents died, Grandma Ellen worked herself to the bone for me. I wore Goodwill clothes and pretended not to care about the mockery. But I was brilliant with numbers and computers. By 16, I was building websites. By 22, I had a degree in a failing consulting business and zero safety net. That's when Vincent found me. He was old money that kept its humanity. We became real friends. He mentored me, not condescendingly, but with genuine respect. When he died 2 years before I met Emma, he left me everything, structured through private trusts. Money changes how people see you, he'd said. Make sure you know who loves you for who you are before they know what you have. So I kept it quiet. The consulting work was real. I enjoyed it. But underneath, I had 40 million liquid, another 20 in real estate, and a portfolio Derek managed expertly. When I met Emma, I was just myself. I didn't need her money. I needed acceptance and value. I'd been such a fool. You own Morrison Capital? Robert repeated slowly. Yes, the husband you thought had nothing. Emma stared at me like I was a stranger. But we live on my trust fund. No, you live on your trust fund. I live on my own money. I always have. You never asked. Alex leaned forward. You've been secretly rich this entire time while we've been treating you like charity? Yes, I said simply. This is insane, Emma whispered. Why wouldn't you tell me? Am I your husband, or am I the acceptable poor kid you married because I didn't threaten Daddy's superiority? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. You've been playing us, Robert said, anger mixing with shock. Testing us. No, I was being myself. You made assumptions. You treated me like I wasn't worth listening to. I just stopped correcting you. Patricia spoke up, her voice tight. You should have told us. It's dishonest. Is it? I turned to her. Was it honest when you hid your gambling addiction? The one Roberts covered up for 15 years for about $4 million in payoffs? She went white. Was it honest, Alex, about those maltreatment settlements your dad paid? 3 women, 800,000 in NDAs? Alex's smirk vanished. Was it honest, Robert, that Hamilton Industries is leveraged to near insolvency? That your $50 million valuation is built on $40 million of my money in loans? You'll default on this quarter? How do you? I do my homework. While you dismissed me, I read every financial statement, every loan document, every report. I know the real estate division is collapsing because you overbid, assuming my capital would cover the gap. I know without my money, you have about 6 weeks before selling assets to cover costs. The silence was complete. You're not actually successful businessmen, I continued quietly. You're just wealthy. There's a difference. Robert stood so fast his chair fell over. You have no right. I have every right. The right of someone treated like nothing for 5 years. Emma reached for my hand. Michael, please, we can fix this. I stepped back using my real name here, though I'd changed it. Can we fix the way you introduced me to friends? The way you apologized for my clothes? The way you assumed I didn't understand money? I was trying to help, she whispered. No, you were managing me, making me fit the slot you'd assigned. The poor but sweet husband, lucky to marry up. I pulled out my phone again. The emergency board meeting is in an hour. All board members must attend for a capital event this large. You're destroying us, Robert said, voice shaking. Over hurt feelings? No. I'm doing this because you made clear you see me as less than, because my wife agrees, because I spent 5 years trying to earn respect that was never going to be given. I respect you, Emma said desperately. Do you? If I'd told you on our first date I was worth 50 million, would you have loved me the same way? She hesitated. Just a second, but enough. That's what I thought. I walked toward the door. Behind me, chairs scraped as they all stood. Where are you going? Emma's voice pitched toward panic. Home. My home. The apartment that I've been keeping in Manhattan, the one you didn't know about. You have an apartment? Alex said. What else don't we know? Everything that matters, I said. You never asked. Emma was crying real tears now. Please don't do this. I love you. I stopped. Do you, or do you love feeling like you saved someone? That's not, I think you married me because I was safe, because I didn't threaten your family's dominance, because you could point to me as proof you were kind enough to love someone despite their circumstances. Despite, her voice broke. Yes, you never loved me because of who I was. You loved me despite it. Despite my background, despite my lack of pedigree, despite everything that makes me me. The board meeting starts in an hour, I said to Robert. You should prepare. It's going to be a long night. I'm going to let you sink or swim on your own merit. I walked out past family portraits of generations who'd looked down on people like me. Emma caught me at the door. Tell me what to do, how to fix this. There's nothing to fix, Emma. This is just reality. You married someone you didn't respect. That's not true. Then why didn't you defend me at dinner? When your father laughed at me? She couldn't answer. You thought he knew better than me. Because I'm just the poor kid who got lucky. Stop it. She grabbed my arm. I love you. Maybe I haven't been perfect, but I love you. What do you love? The man you thought I was, or the man I actually am? I don't know the man you actually are, she whispered. You never let me know him. I've been right here for 5 years. You never asked. This is really happening? You're leaving? Yes. What about us? Our marriage? I think our marriage ended a long time ago. We just didn't notice. If you destroy my family's business, I'll never forgive you. Emma, I'm not destroying anything. I'm removing my support. If your family's business can't survive without my capital, it was never really successful. It was just expensive. I drove away in my 5-year-old Honda that had been Grandma Ellen's. Behind me, the mansion glowed like an empty jewelry box. My Manhattan apartment was quiet, really quiet. I'd bought it 3 years ago for $3 million, and Emma never knew. It was mine in a way nothing else had been. I poured expensive whiskey and watched my phone light up with calls I didn't answer. Derek texted that the board meeting had started, all notifications delivered. I told him to handle the logistics. Emma called. I almost didn't answer, but finally did. You're destroying us, she sobbed. You knew exactly what pulling that money would do. Yes, I did. Why would you hurt us like this? You've been hurting me for 5 years, Emma. You just never noticed because I didn't complain. What do you want from me? I wanted you to see me, the actual me. Chung, then quietly, I'm sorry. What's my favorite book? What's my best friend's name from college? What was my grandmother's name? More silence. Her name was Ellen Morrison. She died 6 months before I met you. She worked 3 jobs to raise me, and you never bothered to remember her name. Emma sobbed harder. I loved you. I said, but you didn't love me. You loved the idea of me. That's not true. Then tell me why you're crying. Because I'm hurt? Or because your family's business is collapsing? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Goodbye, Emma. I turned off my phone. Over the next 6 months, things got messy. Emma's lawyers pushed for a fast divorce. I gave her what she wanted, about $25 million in the settlement. Her family's business filed for bankruptcy. Robert's lawyers tried arguing I'd acted in bad faith, but every withdrawal was contractually legal with proper notification. Judge said so in court. I ran into Emma at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse after the hearing. We talked, really talked, for the first time maybe ever. I don't know who you are, she said. I thought I understood you. I'm exactly who I've always been. You just never looked closely enough. We went back and forth. Finally, I asked her to name 3 things about me that didn't involve how I made her feel. She couldn't. You can't name 3 things because you never paid attention. You love the idea of me, but never actually me. She left. Just like that, 5 years ended in a coffee shop. I threw myself into work. My friend Tom from MIT called about a new AI venture and I invested. I started coding again, building something real and mine. It felt good. Then Jennifer Wilson from the Fairfield Foundation called. They helped underprivileged kids get educational opportunities. She wanted me on the board. Your story is inspiring, she said. Someone who came from nothing and made something. I thought about 12-year-old me calculating lunch money, about Grandma Ellen who gave me everything, about Vincent who'd invested in me. Maybe it was time to pay that forward. Send me information, but if I join, I'm not a trophy. I'll work, have opinions, push for changes. That's exactly what we need. I joined the board and donated 5 million over 5 years. But more than money, I got involved. I restructured operations, built partnerships, mentored kids interested in tech. There was this brilliant 15-year-old girl, Destiny, who reminded me of myself. Flying through code, hungry, and focused. I helped her get a full scholarship to MIT. It felt good. Not like revenge or winning, just good. About 4 months after I joined, Robert called. He was dying, pancreatic cancer, stage 4, 6 months maybe. "I'm calling because I owe you an apology," he said, voice tired. "I was wrong about you. You tried to tell me the business had problems and I mocked you. I treated you like nothing. Why are you calling me? Because I'm dying, and you were right to be cautious. I want to thank you for not being the person I treated you as, for being better than I deserved." I told him he still had time to do something meaningful with what he had left. He died 4 months later. I didn't go to the funeral but sent flowers. A week after, Patricia called to say Robert had left $2 million to the Fairfield Foundation in his will. He said you inspired him, that you showed him what meaningful wealth looked like. 3 years later, I was giving the keynote speech at a foundation gala. We'd grown to serve 5,000 students across 3 cities. The scholarship fund was endowed at $15 million. We'd become a case study in scalable philanthropy. I was backstage when I saw Emma. She looked different, more settled and genuine. She was there with her partner, Sarah, a teacher she'd met volunteering. "It was good to see you," I said after we talked briefly. "I'm glad you're doing well. You too. Break a leg with the speech." I walked on stage and began. 3 years ago, I was sitting at a dinner table with people who thought they knew exactly who I was. They were wrong, but for 5 years I let them be wrong because I wanted acceptance. When I finally walked away, I thought I was making a grand statement, but more importantly, I was freeing myself to become someone who built things that mattered. I talked about the foundation, about inherent worth, about removing barriers instead of saving anyone, about how I grew up poor and invisible, learned to be small, then got lucky with a mentor who saw me, about spending 5 years trying to earn acceptance from people who'd already decided that I wasn't worth respect. When I walked away, I had to figure out who I was without the performance. I discovered I'm a builder, but I'd been building on someone else's foundation. The Fairfield Foundation is mine in the sense that I chose it, I built it, I invest in it because I believe in it. The applause was sustained. We raised $2 million that night. Afterward, Patricia found me. "Your speech was beautiful. Richard heard himself in it, the lessons he taught through his failures. He taught me a lot, not all pleasant. I'd like to donate significantly," she said. $5 million. Richard left me well off, and I've been thinking about what to do with it. I want to establish a scholarship fund in his name, not to absolve him, but to honor what he should have been. I felt something catch. That would change a lot of lives. Good. Lives should be changed. We had resources all along, we just never asked how to use them well. After she left, I stood processing. $5 million from the woman whose husband had called my concerns pocket change. But it wasn't about symmetry. It was about taking something broken and building something better. I got a text from Destiny. "Saw the live stream. That speech made me cry. Thank you for seeing us." I walked home through New York streets, past people living their lives. I wasn't invisible anymore, but I wasn't performing either. I was just present, real. Enough. The documentary about the foundation filmed at the old Hamilton estate 8 years after that dinner. The house had been sold after Patricia died, leaving most of her wealth to the foundation. "Tell me about that night," the director prompted. "The dinner where everything changed." I looked at where Robert had sat. I came thinking I could help. They laughed, made clear I didn't matter. That's when I decided to stop accepting being invisible. Do you regret it? The fallout? I regret pain caused to people who didn't deserve it. But do I regret standing up for myself? No. I'd do it again. After filming, Jennifer called. "The application numbers just came in. We have 12,000 applicants for next year. How many can we take?" "With current funding, maybe 2,000. Then we raise more money. We can't turn away 10,000 kids because of logistics. That's massive. So is starting this foundation. We'll figure it out." I took one last look at the Hamilton estate, got in my Honda, and drove back to the city. The documentary would air in 6 months, telling the story of a man who walked away from wealth and found purpose. But that wasn't really the story. The real story was simpler. A person who decided they were enough, who refused to be invisible, who invested their worth in things that deserved it. The real story was about every kid we'd helped who'd been told they didn't belong and proved otherwise. Worth isn't earned or granted or approved by others. It's inherent. You just have to be brave enough to claim it. Sometimes that looks like walking away from a dinner table where you're not valued. Sometimes it looks like building something new. Sometimes it looks like refusing to accept pocket change when you know you're worth so much more. I drove through the city as the sun set. Somewhere a kid was being told they didn't matter, that their dreams were too big. Tomorrow, maybe they'd find our foundation, get a chance to build their own foundation instead of standing on someone else's. And the cycle would continue. Hurt transmuted into healing. Dismissal transformed into recognition. Pocket change invested into generational change. That was the real story, and it was still being written.